So you've heard from most of everybody here today, but you have not heard from Stephanie yet. So if you've been in Boston or are in Boston, you've probably heard of Startup Boston. Stephanie is Startup Boston, and she just had, so I feel your pain as a fellow conference organizer, although I think you had how many people?
We had about 4,500 registrations and a little over 2,000 attendees, but this is an awesome turnout. I've seen some of the names and the companies that are here. I don't know, I feel very, very overwhelmed, but in a good way.
She was saying to me outside, I don't think I'm qualified. I said, you don't know who's in the audience. You're very qualified.
Well, yeah.
I mean, look at Aman for reason.
And Stephanie, one of the reasons why Stephanie is here is not just running Startup Boston, which looks at a bunch of different verticals, but all you're dealing with all the time are startups in Boston, many of them in healthcare. And so I thought, who better, who was more on the pulse of maybe than an active VC, and what you're seeing. So I'd love to just start there, coming out of your conference, and please go take a vacation and have a drink at some point.
I hear there's drinks, so
there are drinks.
We're wrapping this up soon.
Yes.
I hear.
You can continue your rehab up there. What did you see at the show, and even ramping up to it, and the interesting companies that you met and sessions that you might have had in regards to health and wellness and innovation? What do you see out there happening?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I'm definitely seeing it through a little bit of a different lens this time of year versus other years, solely because of the way hiring and really kind of retaining top talent in the startup industry is. They're competing against larger companies. They're trying to find the best of the best to really help them grow the business. And in a weird way, I think just because of the shift in the economy, it's been a bit of a different lens as we come here today. It used to be more, hey, people are looking for, recreational products like work out with at home, like this time last year. And instead this year, I do find that a lot of companies are thinking, okay, how do we go and create benefits that perhaps, attrain top talent? It's not necessarily your in-person gym membership. You're mostly remote working, so it's not those perks that you would normally have at the office. A lot of it does come down to, what types of, mindful apps are out there that people might want to use for yoga or meditation, and also, what type of, home healthcare are people looking for now post-pandemic as well. So it's a little bit interesting because people are really kind of, figuring out what is out there that's new that the startup employees want that would retain them, if that makes sense.
It does. And then in terms of, is it still a lot of, developers and apps and things like that? What were the interesting health and wellness startups that you saw at Startup Boston? And, what problems are they trying to solve?
Yeah, oh boy, that's a loaded question. I'm going to try to think through how to answer in a coherent way because I tend to get excited and ramble if you didn't notice already. So really from this side of things, I will find that a lot of people are really building apps that, of course you can do home workouts with and help you, really kind of focus and become more mindful. Meditation apps, On Practice, for example, is one that really kind of helps you more at home. Those are definitely kind of rising up. But other types of new startups, I think a lot about Care Academy, for example. They just raised a round of funding, recently. And Helen, I mean, she's an incredible founder.
Very smart.
Yeah, so smart. But they're all about, really providing training for home caregivers. And I see a lot of new types of startups really kind of ramping up that help people learn to do what they love at home in this industry, but also, really kind of cater to how the startup employee wants to work and receive their health care, and which is also in line with I think two panels before me, the husband and wife, they were awesome, by the way, but a lot of what they were talking about too.
That's great. Kate, in sort of continuing on, what you learned today and what inspired you today, but through the lens of investing now. And I know you are focused on health equity, but through the conversations today and through the course of the day, what's sort of bubbling at the top of your mind as you leave here as an investor in terms of what you learned today and where you guys may invest in the future?
Right, I feel like I am slightly more educated in the metaverse because, like everyone else, I wasn't quite sure what it was, and now I have a funny idea where we might want to apply it. I feel reassured based upon the wonderful panel earlier around sort of health equity, and that this is not something for some people to do for others. This is something that we should all be doing for each other, and I think from an investment perspective that has reassured me. One thing I do actually want to touch on around what you just said around the employment factor, which I think might be interesting for investment. At Chicago Arc, when we are looking to invest in a startup that is going to work in healthcare, we ask them, who are you going to employ? Now, we understand that certain people come with educated skill sets that they absolutely need, but with the new way of healthcare coming, and they are using online counselors and other individuals that are yet to be trained, we are specifically asking them, well, can you train a counselor as someone who used to have been a patient for that? Can you train a counselor who is from an underrepresented group, in our case on the south side of Chicago? Because then you aren't just sort of building out your workforce, you're actually providing generational wealth for the people that are from the area. So you're tackling health equity, not just from the front line, you're providing new forms of care, you're actually doing it for the back end too. So I know that's, again, another plug for health equity, and I will stop talking about it. But there are many ways that you can be thoughtful in your investment that can do good and do well at the same time.
Yeah. Michael, in terms of what you saw today, you participate maybe on some of the larger deal sizes and some M&A and things like that. Coming away from today, what's top of mind as you leave the conference? I know you were here most of the day, if not all of it. And where do you see the deal landscape going over the next 12, 24 months? And what did we talk about today where we might see some very interesting companies that scale up and get acquired and really have an impact on the market?
Yeah, I think I'll start because it was brought up here so far, is around the labor first. I think that we've had a number of large clients go through an acquisition of a startup, and they got burned because about 6 months later, most of the workforce from that startup left. It usually starts with maybe 1 or 2 key man risks, and they got their payout and they wanted to leave, they left, and people that followed them, they all left too. Another thing too is that there's a big cultural shift from working with a startup company than working for, let's say, a very big pharma company or a very big health organization. So when you're looking to acquire a startup or you're working with a startup, you really have to take into account how will these two cultures really blend together? How will they actually merge? Because a lot of times it's a big culture shock for them. They maybe had a very tight-knit family group of folks that had a really unique relationship when they worked together, and they had a purpose. They felt they were driven. And then they're sold them now, let's say, working with a very, very large company, and they maybe feel like they're lost in a large ocean now. So I think that there needs to be a more dedicated view of cultural shifts as you're acquiring and bringing in smaller startups. Looking at this year, I would say there's been a heavy still interest in general healthcare services, starting with RCM. Next year, I think there'll be more front office RCM. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of my private equity clients. So more think of things of like the front office authorization, ensuring people understand exactly what they are going to be owed in terms of copay and what the long-term, let's say, payment requirements will be. That kind of coincides with some of the, the price transparency requirements coming out, as well as the No Surprise Act. I also think that last year we still had a lot of interest in long-term care. So especially within the home health, home hospice arena, a lot of deals in that space. I still will continue to believe that home health, long-term care will be a focus next year. They anticipate that to be a growing industry. And I think that, behavioral health used to be hot, maybe for the last 3 years. It's calmed down a little bit, but it's still remained pretty hot, I think, because again, I think that's an area that's beginning to get a lot more traction with payers, understanding exactly what should be covered, and people understand the importance of behavioral health. So I'll stop there, yeah.
That's good. It's a good list. Ritesh, you and I started talking about maybe doing a health and wellness kind of thing before the pandemic, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think we were kicking around the idea, and here we are 5 years later doing it, and we didn't know a pandemic would happen. You see so many different parts of the industry and talk to so many different people in different parts of it. What did you take away from? I'm just personally curious, like what you took away from today, and maybe in the context of what are you even more encouraged about, and maybe even a little less encouraged about, or maybe it's hyper, but what's bubbling around your head as you leave today?
So I think one message is partner ecosystems. We heard it consistently. We're opening APIs, we're looking at partners, we're looking at ways of working together. While I think the ultimate entrepreneur is the sellout or the IPO or the exit, I think more and more people are also looking at, maybe that's not the answer. Maybe I don't want to sell to the enterprise and I want to partner with them. So we started it off this morning with Robin saying this evidence lab thing is created. It's very much a partner ecosystem of people who are jointly coming together to help him do things from a digital perspective. So I would encourage everybody. And I think if you look at startups that have succeeded, when Uber first came out, it was just their app. But then I remember one day, it was in the United Airlines app as well. So when I landed, it said, "Do you want an Uber?" I was like, wow, this is pretty interesting. And we know where you are because the map told us your phone was here, right? So I think those kinds of things is the second piece, which is one is the partner ecosystem and a platform to connect those dots. But the second one that a lot of people talk about is the experience. And Martin, you know about experiences, right? The customer experience and how I consume this stuff is still very broken. And in some cases, horrible, whether it's the healthcare professional using Epic or the customer using the portal, right? So there's a lot of health systems who are now starting to bring that together as well, saying you only go to one place for all of this stuff. And I think that's going to be something really interesting.
And do you think just in terms of, and Ryan touched on it a little bit, I was hoping she'd maybe go a little deeper in terms of HHS and what ONC is doing and the consumer health data. Will there be a wave of innovation? I mean, will that API truly be open? Can the government get there to have a truly open API that's secure and HIPAA compliant and the whole 9 yards? Are we going to see, and anybody can jump in on that, but I'll start with Ritesh. But
Yeah. I don't think the government can do it, no way, but I think the innovators will help us along the way, right? The other way to do it is to get CMS to force some changes in the reimbursement model. And if Medicare and Medicare takes it on, and then you have access to data and there's some incentive there, then the players, the bigger commercial players will take it on, and it's all about following the money after that, right? So that could be the other way to do it. But ONC and HHS on their own can create that framework, which is what they've done. Hopefully there's some carrots and sticks in there. The sticks have now arrived with the open data law, so you can now sue Epic if you felt like it, before you couldn't. I don't know if you can sue Judy, she'll kill you anyway, but that's a different story. So I think, the innovators will do that. I think it's incumbent on people in here, the big companies, the smaller companies, to say, I now have access, what do I do with it? And how can I change that? And I go back to the experience. And I go back to the connected data set. And how do I connect it all up? Everybody thinks it's going to be Amazon or Google. I think it's Apple. Watch Apple. They'll do it. Because they're very focused on the experience.
I couldn't agree more. And they understand apps, and they created this whole thing.
Yep.
So they get it. So I'd like anybody to ask a question, or frankly, if you just have a comment. And we have some mics out here. So questions, comments for our panel, or if you've just been wanting to get something off your chest today and share your opinion, please do. So back here, Mark, and introduce yourself, Mark. Even though
sure, Mark Silva-Kite. Just wanted to give big props to the last few panels that you had on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not usually represented during these conferences. You did a great job of bringing the topic to bear, some amazing speakers. And I think we all have our homework coming away from here to be thinking about that top of mind.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody else? Questions, or someone wants to say something? Come on, I know. It's human nature.
The cookies were delicious.
The cookies were delicious. The sandwiches were excellent too, which is Al's, by the way, and apparently a local. And it's next door. We digress. Anybody questions? There must be questions, or I can ask another one. So Stephanie, I'll go back to you. In terms
Thanks,
of
guys.
So 2023, tell us a little bit about Startup Boston, what you're focusing on, particularly in the health and wellness space, and how do you engage with the community, like maybe specifically within sort of the health and wellness verticals and the startups you're engaging? Or do you have meetings and workshops and Coke and Pepsi and pizzas, but tell us how people can get involved and what you're going to do.
Yeah, definitely. So to take it a step back, basically Startup Boston, we use our website as the platform to really kind of point startups, people within the startup ecosystem on where they should go to network with or get investment from, or to just really mingle and learn with, right? At an industry breakdown level. That's the sentence we're going for. Really
tell them how you got the idea. That's the best part.
That's even more off topic.
Come on. No, everybody needs to know. This is a great thing.
All right, so sidebar. I started Startup Boston back in 2017 because I co-founded a MarTech company.
At 26.
Yes. And I had no idea what I was doing, or how to even build a company, and I didn't know anyone in Boston, like literally no one at all. So I started Boston to really kind of check both of those boxes, and I've been fortunate enough where it really did take off, and the whole community got behind it. To your point, like they've really got behind it in terms of other types of organizations and investors really wanting to be a part of the organization, but also our flagship conference week. So to kind of go back to your original question too, like really kind of our job from this side is to really kind of know who is who in that ecosystem. Become friendly with Mass Bio, for example. They're great people to know. If you want an intro, let me know. But our job is really to kind of know like who are the experts within each of the industries, and then to kind of point people to this is who you need to talk with if you're looking to learn more about landing investment in that industry, or looking to hire in that industry, or just generally want to know how to scale your startup, which is really difficult.
I have a question for is this solely for just Boston-based companies?
I asked
I'm
the
a
same
startup
question.
in New Jersey.
Yeah, I asked the same question.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah,
about
yeah.
It's New England, yeah, right?
It is all New England. Let's talk. We'll meet on the roof
Hey,
after.
yeah, let's. There's a few of us.
But yeah,
New
no,
Jersey,
definitely.
New Jersey. We can do this. There you go.
I love it. Yeah, honestly, really kind of like our goal from this end is to support all of the other organizations in New England. So we do use our platform as an umbrella for all of the other organizations throughout New England and New York City. But for example, Rhode Island had their Startup Week. We wanted support them. Other people do their own thing, and I think that the only way for us to all really kind of build awesome things is to work together and to support each other. And then healthy competition also is very good.
Maybe we'll do this event with Inside Startup
There
Boston
you
Week
go.
next week.
There
I
you
think
go.
not.
No, I really love how this is evolving. I
I
love
think
it.
so.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm serious, too. Question back here. Dr. Hall.
Hi, I so enjoyed the day. I learned so much. I really loved the virtual reality presentation, and I was really struck by the potential for it to be of benefit, but also to be of harm, because you're really kind of putting somebody into this altered reality. And I'd really be curious to hear from the panel or anybody here, what are you thinking about in terms of the dark side of technology, and what are the guide rails that you're putting on to prevent the harm that could be done by technology?
Anybody can jump in.
I'm happy to talk about that because I literally had a real life situation come up in the last few weeks where someone in a certain region of the country reached out to me and said, hey, we've been kind of charged from this particular state to go forward and look into some technology, and we're going to quickly grab some stuff and pilot it in a pediatric environment in children that already had behavioral health problems. And so when it comes to like the dark side of technology, I think the thing that we need to be super careful of is that there is a lot of government funding out there.
Can you guys hear, Kate?
Oh, sorry.
No, they can't hear you, so maybe
Sorry.
use, because this is an important thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to be super clear. There is a lot of government funding that is currently being released for certain things that are going to be in telemedicine, digital health, and that kind of thing. And that is absolutely wonderful to support care of people who truly need it. What I think we also need to be cognizant of is, unfortunately, there might be some bad players that take this as an opportunity to quickly jump in, pick something, and implement it in what I would consider a very vulnerable population. So when I think about the use of technology, I think about it that way. And I think we need to support our legislators to make sure that when they're disseminating the funds, they're truly picking people that know what they're doing with this technology, because the whole premise of medicine is that you do no harm. That needs to come first. And even if it means putting great technology out there, make sure that you've done that first.
Is there, along those lines, so in terms of drugs and things like that, there's the FDA. Is there a government organization, to Dr. Hall's point, that is really responsible for, there's data privacy, so that may fall under, I don't know, DOJ or I don't know where.
That's the FTC.
The FTC. So to that point, is there, not that we all want
asked
more
Ryan
government
that
oversight,
earlier, but we asked Ryan that earlier, remember?
Yeah.
So you've got the open data rule. I tell my boys this, my kids, with every good, there's a bad, to your point. So you've got to understand the bad, right? And what are you going to do about it? The data law says you can now have open access to data, but they didn't think about, well, who would have it, and what would be the issue if there was a problem, like my Clear example, right? Why does Clear want my data, all my health data, for 30 days? What are they going to do with it? But we just check the box and say, yes, I give you authorization, because I want to get into the concert, and I want to prove I'm vaccinated so I can get in the concert. So I think there is some conversation that's going on, but we do need to be very clear that with all of this open data stuff, there is a vast potential, and which is why I asked the question. If innovators don't watch it, we may kill the whole industry by one or two bad actors doing something really bad with the data. The pediatric example, for example, case, right? So,
and I'd also say that is one advantage of Apple, right? Apple, if you're now talking a device or an open API or apps, is Apple has always taken this very seriously. Like, it's not easy to get an app approved for the App Store, right? And they have always taken this very seriously. So, Apple's not going to solve all the problems, to be sure. But I think in terms of who has an advantage in terms of that kind of world, we saw that with the very early days of the app ecosystem. That Apple was always very serious. Not just any app can get in there, and they're very serious about the data and who's getting it and who's sharing it. Ask the advertising industry about Apple and what they're doing now. So it's like
to answer your question, though, there are people within organizations that are now being created, cybersecurity officers, chief privacy officers, who are all charged with creating departments to look at this. And at Health Systems, I know Vanderbilt has got a whole new team of people that are looking at, if we give access to the data now because we're compelled to, what does that mean, and how do we protect our patients' rights and our patients' data? So there are health systems also doing that and saying, okay, I'll comply with the law, but I still need to protect my patients. So there are people looking at it for sure.
There are laws right now, obviously. There's HIPAA, but there's the CCPA, which is in California, which is a lot more stringent than HIPAA. It's more closely probably aligned to GDPR. And most national companies, since they have to abide by CCPA, they'll abide by, they have to, they're already working in California, they'll abide by that throughout the company. That being said, if you're not doing business in California, it's not as strict as other European countries. We should probably raise those standards.
I think we have a question or comment over here.
Yeah, just a comment.
And if you could introduce yourself as well.
Sure, yeah. Joe Morgan, I'm a physician, and I founded a company called Waya Health that builds extended reality applications 6 years ago. And we commercialized nationwide. But the point I wanted to make to the comment with regards to extended reality is, at a very fundamental level, the main thing that needs to be digested is the fact that it's an extremely potent medium. Mm-hmm. And once you have an appreciation for that, then everything kind of comes into place with regards to potential for harm, as well as, the degree to which things really need to be very well thought out from end to end before being implemented.
Thank you for that. We have one more. I think we might do one more comment question over here, and I think the natives are getting restless.
There is gin and tonics upstairs, right?
Yes.
I'm
just for you, Ritesh.
Thank you.
Just for you.
Go get your pipes.
Hi, I'm Steve Kellner. I'm president of Ascent Leadership Networks. I have just a thought for you that I've been thinking about throughout these sessions, which was from 1952 by science fiction writer Robert Heinlein, in which was that every technology goes through 3 stages. Do you know it? Yeah. First, a crudely simple and quite unsatisfactory gadget. Second, an enormously complicated group of gadgets designed to overcome the shortcomings of the original and achieving thereby somewhat satisfactory performance through extremely complex compromise. Third, a final stage of smooth simplicity and efficient performance based on correct understanding of natural laws and proper design therefrom. So my question for you is, how far are we, and how long before we get to stage 3?
And i.e. Apple's business model.
Well, if you talk to a health system, so that was 1950, 2050. There you go. I think, there are people who are working towards that, and we heard about 5G today. Some of it is infrastructure related. If you get the infrastructure right, then you'll be able to put things on top of that infrastructure, platforms, etc. So, and we aren't there yet. Look, there's still hospitals that get hit with ransomware because they haven't, backed up their systems or patched them properly. So until we fix some of those things, those core issues, it's a little way to go. But there are people working on it. I'm not saying all is lost. My motto is, if it moves, digitize it. So I'm very optimistic.
I'll say that I think it's going to take an effort where you really bring in the folks who truly understand healthcare. There's been a number of very, very, very smart technology companies, very large ones, even other financial companies who've come in from the outside thinking, hey, how's this going to be such a mess? We can fix this because we're smart enough. I think Amazon, JP Morgan, and somebody else wanted to go out, but they came
Berkshire
together.
Hathaway.
Yes.
There
Yes.
you go.
I think that kind of went away after a year, if I'm not mistaken, because it's hard, and we are a lot more complex than they initially thought. Even their smartest minds came in and tried to do it, and they realized that we are in a very, very entangled mess, and it takes all four kind of pillars. I think payers, pharma, and providers, everyone working together to really kind of find how we can do this, in the right way. We're probably somewhere in the second stage, hoping to get the third. But it sure feels close when we have conferences like this today, and you hear folks who are doing the VR and other folks who are just really on cutting edge of understanding ways to really be better engaged with patients and kind of be closer to patients.
That's great. Kendall is giving me the 000 clock. So Josh, if you'd like to come up just as
before
Yo,
you
yes,
do
please,
that,
please.
Before you do that, Josh, Kate and I would like to thank Drew and this team, the people holding the iPads, the people with the badges outside. Thank you so much. This was great.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all of you for being here all day. I know that's quite a lot of content. Thank you to the staff, to Caitlin, to Kendall. I know Kim is out there. Dan Costa, where's David Kirkpatrick? He's probably talking. He's probably talking to somebody as well. So he's probably doing. And Ritesh and Kate, thank you as my co-chairs very much. Jim Doherty here in the back. We started this conversation very early as well, and you've been a great help. So, round of applause for all of you. We are going to get to drinks and a little bit of light fare. But Josh, you have any closing?
No, I just want to also thank KPMG for being a great host and really working with us on this event. Corporate Insight, Rare Base, and all the other community partners that help us, bring this group together. So thank you to all of you.